Hello, and welcome to Have Your Say here at Mainline Television. I'm Ann Minicozy, president of the Community Breakfast Collaborative Undoing Racism Day, here with our co-host Diana Robertson, president of the NAACP Mainline branch. And we're honored today to have with us both Superintendent Christopher Flanagan, who is superintendent of Radnor Police Department, and Mr. Kevin Strowman, who does a few things. He works with Radnor Township Civic Association and also Mainline Mentoring, which will be another program at some point. Today, we're going to talk specifically about a recent late summer town hall meeting that was held at the Radnor Township Civic Association on Highland Avenue in West Wayne. And this meeting was facilitated by Kevin Strowman and Chris Flanagan, an opportunity for the public to come out and talk about policing, community relations, and a host of other topics. We do have some footage recorded from that town hall meeting, and we will show that first and share that with you. And then after that, we're going to be having a conversation. This will be a two-part program because there are many things to discuss in terms of community and policing. So we will have that recorded material first, and then we'll return back to our conversation.
Thank God for this opportunity for everyone to come together. Right now, there's been a lot of things going on in our country, and not only in the country, but throughout the world. And Chief Flanagan had the heart to sit back here and open up his heart, his police force, and everything else that has to do with Radnor Police in this township to the RTCA building.
So did the Radnor Police get any implicit bias training?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We had the Anti-Defamation League, which is one of the single source largest law enforcement training agencies in the country that trained us in anti-bias. There's two parts to that. The police officers had some very specialized training, and the ADL realizes the challenges because we're going into people's homes and doing, sometimes there's a domestic and there's a lot of tensions and different things. So all of the officers every officer has gone through that, and we team up now. Lower Merion Police and Haverford Police also use the same training program, so that if we only have one person, it's like $5,000 or $6,000 off the top of my head to bring them out. So we'll throw a person in there and vice versa. They'll jump in with two people. So we give that. And then the ADL also has a program I'm going to call kind of for municipal workers and general workforce, and all of our township staff, every employee went through that. Everybody who worked for us, from trash to the codes department. And I'm very proud of that effect. Second thing is we had Major Ben Brooks. He came in and he did a program for us. Not every officer has gone through that because he's kind of gotten bigger, more popular, and it's harder to get him. But he had a program that had to do with de-escalation and anti-bias, so it was a little bit of combined. But right now, the ADL is sort of our standard, and I think it's one of the highest standards in the country, and in fact, overseas as well.
It's not just tonight. If we start something, it's got to keep going. Okay? This isn't something where, okay, we did it and that's it. And if we can't sit down and say, let's have a follow-up on this in 3 months or 6 months, then I'm sorry. You've got a lot of kids out there. There they go again. Yak, yak, yak. And that's the issue here. I realize there's not a lot of children here, but I often say I Uber drive now. The stuff I hear in cars is remarkable, how parents talk. And it's essentially that a lot of kids are just saying this. I met a young kid today. He's from Nigeria. He's only been here 5 years. And he's just like, people don't listen. People don't care. They tell us what we think. And I know that's not your job. But as parents, we all have to look at this. And again, whether you're a police officer or a member of the community, we've got to start realizing not only does it begin at home because we say it begins at home, but we've got to start doing it. And I think the success is years ago, I think Joe might be the only one that remembers Officer Brogan, but he was a crossing guard down at the middle school. And he used to almost address everybody by name because you saw him every day, but also he would ask, hey, how you doing today? What's your name? Whatever. And I think that's the thing. We've gotten to a point where, yes, we do this, and we have 400 or 500 friends, but how many of us do this?
Something like this venue here would be a good opportunity to have with our youth in the community where they can give you feedback on what they would like to see. So, you know, I'd be willing to start something up like that. I know my children are grown now, and but I have more time on my hands now than I did when they were younger because I worked a lot. But I think that would be a good opportunity. Is we look around here and we're all, you know, of age, and we're looking for the youth and our young adults to be here to get to know you all.
There's a major issue going on in this country with race relations. And right now, this being a predominantly black neighborhood, there's no doubt that the effect of what's going on in the country has a direct effect with us. Now, I grew up here too. I'm scared to drive around. I'll be honest with you. I'm 64 years old. I'm scared to drive around because I don't trust the police. So I had a conversation with a lot of youth around here about coming to this meeting, and they all said they didn't want to come. They wanted to see, you know, some type of response. And the reality of it is nothing happens overnight. We know that. But I think it's imperative that, number one, the Radnor Township Police really needs to look at a community advisory board. And just like someone said, if you're not from around here, I know there's people on some of these boards that don't have a clue about Highland Avenue.
Say that.
So you have to get somebody on here that's from the community that can really speak directly to the community about what's going on in the community, and not someone that lives outside the community to dictate to you what may or may not be true. And that is very, very important. These young people are afraid of you. And there's no reason. I grew up, I knew the cops.
Every complaint that comes into the police department, whether it is an email, an anonymous call, somebody in person, whatever, will be investigated. I can assure you of that. And in this day and age, with all the cameras that we have as well, with the body cameras and the in-car cameras, it really helps the whole process along. But what we certainly have decided to do recently was we instituted a complaint form itself. We're hoping this streamlines some of the complaints that people may have. It has a lot of information on here for you to see. There's a lot of information for you to fill out that we can get them from you. Some of the issues that I can have sometimes when we get the anonymous calls or somebody just sends an email is there's not a lot of information. And I've reached out to a lot of people who've sent them back to the emails they've come from and never have had any follow-up from certain things. So we'll still look into it, but it really helps validate the whole process if somebody can sit down and talk to me and tell me in person so we can have a conversation about what's going on. I've been on this department for 41 years. I've grown up in Radnor. I'm proud of the department. I think that we can always do better. I'm not going to say we were at the pinnacle. Nobody ever is. So I think that we always have room for improvement. If there's something we can get from the community to tell us there may be certain officers, the way that they're acting or talking to people or whatever that offends people, let us know. We need to know that as well because we need to make these officers better also. And I can say from being an older member, I'm also 64 and killing my knees standing here right now. But,
Me too.
but a lot of the younger cops that are around here anymore, they're great people, but there's a whole different culture with them as well. They're more of the on the phone, texting people rather than getting out of the cars and talking to people in the community. So it would be really nice if we could get them out there and doing that. And some of them have started doing it, especially since they're on the bicycles, motorcycles, and everything like that.
And I'm incredibly fortunate to know a lot of the residents, not just on this block, but throughout, all 14 miles of Radnor Township. And I'll stop no matter where I am, if I'm on Ramblewood and Bryn Mawr or here on Highland Avenue. I know that that's the case for a lot of our officers. And we're incredibly lucky that they'll stop us when we do those school visits and we can continue a conversation that perhaps started here tonight or, started a couple months ago when we were here for another event or throughout the town. A lot of our officers know the athletics that the students play and might ask about that or their successes that they're going on to into college. So we're definitely lucky, to have that personal interaction of being, essentially a small town police department.
There's been a massive reduction in police recruiting across the country for many reasons. People just don't want to do the job. But still, it should be statistical to the amount that you have. Do you see what I'm saying? So we do our best, and we're willing to take any new idea that's reasonable and put it into play to get that. But you're welcome to meet with our team. If you have a different idea, We tell the commissioners what we're doing. We like I said, we're advertising in a major newspaper because you have to live in Pennsylvania to be a police officer in the Commonwealth. So we do everything that we possibly can to get the word out.
Okay. Thank you for that footage from the recording. I think it's very interesting. A number of responses from people in the community on a host of issues. And just to sum up a couple of the things, I think it was really interesting to have mentioned that the implicit bias training that several townships participate in, police from several townships, Lower Merion, Haverford, and Radnor, all have a training that the Anti-Defamation League assists with. There are just so many conversations. The fact that there were many adults and seniors at the town hall meeting who were looking for the voices of the youth, which I think we're always looking for the voices of the youth. I know that's something that Diana and I work on in both the NAACP and the Community Breakfast Collaborative. The importance to respond now of what's going on in the country and how people are afraid of the police. So in this first program, we're going to try to keep it as local as possible and really talk about the relationships that community members have with local police officers. So I just wanted to lay out a couple of those pieces from the town hall meeting. But the culture that the police has, how the police engage in our community, things like that. Before we plunge in though, could we just have a 30-second from each of you talking about your background and what brought you to the work that you're doing? So Chris, if you could go first.
Absolutely. Very glad to be here. Thank you for having us. And I love working with Kevin. We've been to several different meetings together. So I think we really respect each other's positions and challenge each other. I live in Ardmore in Lower Merion Township, and I've been serving here at the Radnor Police Department for just about 24 years of service. I'm heavily involved in volunteering. I spend time volunteering on an ambulance and a fire company. And the reason I mention that is I get to see a lot of different people in different ways and in the realm of emergency services, which is my passion. In the same breath, I really enjoy being with volunteers and their value to the community and how they see different things. So I think it gives a great perspective and a launch for the conversation we're going to have.
Okay, thanks. And how about you, Kevin?
Oh, yeah. Well, first, I just want to thank everyone for coming together, and you and Ann and Diana for putting this together. And Chief, definitely. My name is Kevin Strowman. I grew up in Mount Pleasant, which is another Black section in Wayne. So I was born and raised there. I'm the president and founder of Mainline Mentoring. Been doing that since 1994. The vice president of the RTCA board, which is Radnor Township Civic Association. And I just been working in our community, ever since I came home. So for me, it's just a blessing to try to give back and try to make a difference, especially in our youth's lives. And that's kind of where I'm at. And no doubt, today's climate, there's a lot of things that I would like to make sure happens in our community and doesn't happen in our community. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Now, Diana, I know you have a lot of questions that we must cover. And while we were getting ready to record, we decided we have to have a two-part program.
Right,
So I'm
absolutely.
Say, where do we start, with our questions here?
So I want to start with, based on, from the context of the video, as for the Chris Flanagan, how do you define community policing? Like, we constantly use that terminology, and I think it might be considered different from the stance of the police department versus the community itself. So I'm curious as to how do you define community policing?
Community policing, in every profession, there's sometimes buzzwords. And before there was things about enforcement, we learned how to go to active shooter. We had to adjust ourselves as a profession to, unfortunately, those type of scenarios where actions or events, I should say, changed the way our police procedures were forever. So after Columbine, people changed. In the same breath, community policing has changed, and it became a very big part of it. There was many books, many of the supervisors over the last 5-10 years had to study about community policing. Community policing brought officers out of their cars, put them in the community. I think what's happening now with community policing, it's an ever-breathing item, and you have to treat it that way. Because you have 5 programs doesn't mean you can't adjust them and make them more well-rounded, or potentially scrap them, which is a hard thing to do sometimes when you work so hard on something, and be engaged in your community. And I talked earlier about volunteers, getting information from your people, your religious institutions, the people on the street, having small events so you can talk outside the township building, help us be community policing, and it changes. Each community has different challenges, different positives, and we just have to keep working on it. And I think it's like medicine. They're never satisfied with just doing it one way. They constantly are trying to handle a heart attack better, a stroke better. And that's what policing today is. The progressive police departments across the country or locally, I think, are trying to do that and retool themselves. And those who may not be as caught up in community policing or other challenges are trying to follow recommendations and guidelines. And I know we'll talk about some of the federal and state ones that come down later, but they're trying their best on their own, I believe. And it's important to know that and find out about what community policing means to your particular police department as well, not just my version here in Radnor Township.
Okay, great. And Kevin, I want to ask you from your perspective, as someone living in the community, how do you see community policing?
Well, I basically see it as, the foundation of the relationship, and that is getting to know each other, getting to know the cops on the beat. I also believe that, especially speaking from African American, viewpoint, it's critical that a lot of the cops coming in understand the culture, understand, the differences, and understand who they are actually policing. A lot of times what happens is, we don't have that opportunity to get to know them. They just come in, and right now, and especially in today's climate, it appears to be that most cops are bad. Well, we all know that's not true, but if you don't know the cop, or you automatically put up a defense, and vice versa, the cop can come in with their preconceived notions or their stereotypes, and we all have stereotypes. So there's a whole lot of things that goes into trying to make the relationship between the community and the police much better. And I think it starts with, kind of what we're doing and what we did, which is dialogue. We got to get to know each other and know, the differences and the similarities, so that when no matter who comes in, they know that Highland Avenue block, they know the Mount Pleasant block, they know, the different, areas of where different people are. And, like I said, don't jump to conclusions, but, give the same respect that everyone else, has and demands, and something that we want. So.
And I think that's important. And I know there was an allusion made as to those who were in attendance and those who were not, and the fact that the young people were not there. And I mean, we all know from, when we think back, well, to when we were young, our attitude then versus maturing and learning and experience and what it is now. But in a time when we've just gone through, like I said, we were talking about what's going on in the country, and clearly what does go on in the country, because of technology and what people are able to see and witness in real time, it impacts everybody. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people then, when certain things happen, they see themselves as part of that experience. And how do you think then, with all of the rallies and all of the, the aftermath of all of that, that the young people locally in our communities, how do you think their perception is, and what they're willing to do to make sure certain things do not happen in their own community?
For me?
Yeah, you can start.
Well, I'll go this way first. A lot of the kids I try to talk to come to the town hall, And one of the first things they came up, why? They're not going to listen to us. And then the other thing is, well, if we're going to come up and say something, we want to see some results. Well, what's going on now with all the problems that's been coming around in terms of police brutality, police, and I'm going to say it, blatantly murdering people, all those type of things has anger that has bubbled up against the police. So, right now, I think a lot of young people are looking for answers. And most importantly, they're looking for results. They're looking for something substantial that they can hold on to and say, all right, we are working towards this. I think a dialogue with the young people is critical, because like I said, a lot of them are fearful of the police. A lot of them feel like they're harassed by the police. And I'll be honest with you, some of them that said those things, I had to let them know also, you got to make sure that you're not doing your wrong. So you can't point a finger at the police. You're sitting here doing wrong. So, it's a combination. I know me growing up, I was but my interaction with the cop is that I knew the cop. You know what I mean? So, they tell on me or, they put me in my place. And it's a difference now because a lot of the young people that are coming on the police force, some of them aren't from this area. So they don't even have an understanding of the main line and the black populace that is there. The black populace has been here for a long time and these issues have been going on for a long time. So now it's time to get the dialogue and try to get the young people involved. And I think just allowing them not only to voice freely and not have no backlash, but also, to put something substantial on the table so that we could all work together, to make, this whole thing better.
Okay.
Well, one thing that I wanted to ask also from that bit of footage that we shared from the town hall, one of the attendees suggested that there be some kind of community advisory board.
Yes.
That's how the community breakfast started. There was a community awareness committee that Radnor Township had that was formed in 2000, met every year for a unity breakfast until about 2008 when the economy tanked. And a couple years after that, we started it up. And actually, Superintendent Flanagan, you were a lieutenant then, and I guess you had slightly more time, but you were on the steering committee. And so we saw that transformation together. And Kevin, you came to the breakfasts a number of years as well. So as a township and as a community, we had that way of responding, a kind of a municipal response. I think in particular, we're talking now about youth who aren't going to go to the town hall that you all just offered because they want to see some change. So do you think that, and then Superintendent Chris, maybe this is a question for you. Do you think that we should have some kind of a forum where it's youth giving comments and feedback, focus group, youth who could develop programs and conversations, and that's something the Community Breakfast Collaborative could help with, to have youth and police talking with each other. I know we have a few things going on with other organizations like Race for Peace, but that mission, their mission's a little bit different. But really with a spotlight on youth, having a voice about police. They're the ones who have to go through the lockdowns. They're the ones who have to duck down from the windows when they're at school, right? So they really should have much more of a voice. And maybe is that something that we all can help to make that happen? And that's for you, Chris.
Absolutely. So, a couple different things. One is, let's just talk about the youth because it was missing at our town hall meeting. And I think they wanted to take a pulse of what happened and if it was legitimate or not. And I would like to say Kevin can answer better than I can, but I think they realized there was real questions on the table. It wasn't us telling everybody, hey, this is perfect. There's no issues here. We don't need any new ideas or programming. We came with an open mind and an open heart to hear what our community had to say. And, there were some things that people were upset about. And then there were some things that people constructively came up and said, hey, let's work on some youth initiatives, which is probably a letter's already been addressed to Kevin and his gracious board who held the event outside and let us use their facilities. that we have a follow-up meeting just on youth programming, because the whole night, as you can imagine, was filled up. Like in a matter of seconds, Kevin was unplugging the mic saying, "We got to go because it's dark outside." So, but the youth is important for programming, and I think we all agree. And the best thing about being at the community breakfast is having the kids at the table, sharing their perspective, because it's humbling. And we all talk a lot, we all do things. And when you hear a kid's perspective, a child's perspective, it's phenomenal. And I think that's one of the highlights of the community breakfast. But we're going to try and continue that conversation here in Radnor. I can say that for sure. And with the RTCA helping guide that and being that neutral group to bring us all together, I think we'll see results. And I think we agree that if there's a good seed planted in the youth, it's going to multiply as they raise children or do whatever they decide to do, and may stay in a community or even if they go somewhere else. So we're excited about that component of that. So that's the youth answer.
Yeah. And I think the other piece I was going to say, and I think the other piece that's important, because one of the things that I constantly listen to as to what's being done, what we're doing, what's the steps we're taking. But I think from the youth and even the community as a whole, the perspective has to be, what do you want to see happen? How are you feeling about the things that are going on? Because when you start off with, this is what we're doing, and we want you to know this and that and the other, sometimes the appearance to the person who then says, I'm not feeling that, is that you've got the answers, you're making the decisions, and you haven't included us to understand from our perspective what's needed, how we feel, what's the interaction we're having. Because I know when we've done things from the NAACP perspective, that's one of the things that we always do, because I think what happens is that people have a perception of what's going on. And when people start talking as to their real experiences, folks will look, well, I didn't know that was taking place, or I didn't know about this or that and the other. And people don't always aren't going to file complaints because of that same reason. They don't think anything's going to take place. So I think in having a session that starts off with the community and saying, okay, what is it you're feeling? What are your experiences? How do you believe that we can help change this? I think that's where we're starting talking about really building relationship, and they won't come back and say, we're not getting heard.
Can I chime in on that real quick? First of all, I just want to shout out two people. Number one, Patricia Crutchfield. She's the one that really spearheaded this with the chief and the whole police department and his staff, and also with Luel Lucci, our president. We are definitely looking to do more things with the RTCA and the community. There were a few members that were there that also wanted to be involved, and so we're going to try to get that relationship, all of us together. But I also want to chime in on as far as the youth. Real quick, I think one of the things that happened, and I kind of alluded to it then, a lot of times people in power have a tendency to talk to people that don't have a pulse of the community. So in order to move forward, you have to make sure that the people that are actually in the community that have been subjected to whatever, things that go on or actions that go on between the police, they have to be at the table. Because a lot of times when people that don't really have the pulse, they're speaking for a community, and that's when the youth, I know for a fact, there are people that were mentioned to me that they have no respect for, and I'm being honest, you know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to make a change when you have people that are involved that really don't know the kids, or the kids don't respect, and that could be, once again, dialogue. Everything starts with the honest, no holds barred, no repercussion type dialogue, and I think that's very critical. And definitely, we are looking forward to working with Chief Flanagan and all of you and anybody else, because, as the old African proverb goes, it takes a village, to raise a community. And I'm definitely a part of the village, and I know all of you are. So, we're ready. I'm ready.
And we might have to have it as part of a Zoom because I think, people are still, when it talked about, coming out, people are still leery of that. And I know almost every meeting I still have is by Zoom or whatever.
Right.
And I know everybody doesn't, may not have all the access, but the one folks, this group of people who do use technology are the young people. So they are the ones that will use the technology. And I think as we're moving forward into fall, and it starts to get dark, I do think, that I think we would have had a lot more had we had the Zoom session, because I know for myself, I had another Zoom session. So I was on that. So I couldn't physically be someplace else. But the one advantage about the Zoom is that you can literally get off on one Zoom. And if something's starting in 10 minutes, then, now I can hop on this and still be a part of it and attend that. So I do think that format is something for the next session that's done would be something that probably would work for everybody. And you would probably have an even larger audience of people participating. So, and I guess one of the other questions, Chris, just real quick, I know that obviously with anything, there are policies, there ordinances, there's training to take place for all of that. What are your thoughts on placing the code of conduct and all of that on your website?
I think that I'm just going to answer real quickly. We have no problem with it. There's one or two, such as a bank robbery policy and some other things, shouldn't be accessible for tactical reasons. But out of 98% of them can be posted. We're going to be doing that. We're actually doing a website upgrade, and we'll be adding all of those. We currently have our two policies up right now, our use of force and our body cam policies, so the community knows right now what's going on. So the answer is yes. And just on the juvenile thing, one thing we don't advertise, but one of the ways we're getting information from the kids in Radnor Township is, this would have been the second year, but last year we started meeting with student government of private and public schools. And we brought pizza to them, so I got to eat a lot of good food. But most importantly, we heard just from their perspective and their thought processes. And they had some questions were very simple. We explained it and it was like a light bulb went off. And then others were very complex as we saw the night Kevin we were all together hearing from the community. So it's little things and big things. And we're starting that small wedge. And I just wanted to share that as a great way to reach juveniles.
Okay. Awesome.
So jumping back to you, Kevin, for a minute.
We'll have to wrap up here now. Sorry to say, and we'll have to continue in our second half of our program.
Right. And so, as we're looking at that, so if you had statements to make as far as, Kevin, how you would like to see things move forward, what would that be for both the police department and the community?
I think, in a nutshell, it's very important that everybody take away their stereotypes, their biases, their preconceived notions, everything else, and let's just all sit down and really talk and have an honest talk and work together, because we are all in this together. And if we do that, I think there's no doubt we can make such an improvement. I mean, and it's not like where we live at is bad either. You know what I mean? There's occasionally things. My whole thing from the beginning was I just don't ever want to see any of this in my backyard. And so for me, it's just, let's all get together, and anybody and everybody that wants to be involved, should be. This is, even though we're talking about basically African Americans, for me, the reality of it is for everybody, and anybody that has an issue should, be able to voice their opinion freely and not worry about it, so, things we may not agree on, that's fine and dandy, but let's figure out what the problem is and let's all work together on it. So I'm very happy once again to be doing this. And Chief, nice seeing you, and I'll be following you next time you guys have pizza.
Not a problem. And I'll just jump on what Kevin said. I think it's about communication, and I want to make sure the audience listening knows that the police departments in this area are taking it extremely seriously. They're taking it even to a higher level than that. Don't forget our amazing leadership in our communities. The Radnor Board of Commissioners, The township manager, Bill White, all of the other townships, whether they're supervisors or commissioners, are actively involved. You can have a voice right now, right during the segment. You can pick up the phone if you have a concern. Of course, I encourage you to go directly to the police department that serves you. But if you don't feel comfortable, reach out to those leaders. They are in touch with the community. And if you have something to say, they want to add that to their knowledge base so they can work on it. So every piece of information is important. But don't forget, you don't have to just go to the police department. Our boards, our township managers, borough managers, whatever it may be, are there to help as well.
Okay, so just want to be able to conclude and pull us together, because I know, like you said, we will have a part 2 to continue the conversation. I want to thank you, Chief Flanagan, for being here with us, and I want to thank you, Kevin Strowman, for contributing as well, and to all of our listening audience to be able to listen, digest, think about your community and what you would like to see happen, and understand that NAACP is a big part of all of this as well. We've done a lot of this stuff for years. And so just know that we're going to have a part 2. And as you digest it all, think about it, consider it, talk to your neighbors. We want everybody to be able to have your say. Thank you.